The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to answer some really interesting listener questions, and we will preview the upcoming Inter-Miami match and then cover some other Austin FC news. My name's Landon, and I'm joined once again from a hotel by Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and yes, often I do these from hotels. This week we're traveling to meet with some insurance agents that we do a lot of business with, so I'm in Houston at the Post Oak, which is one of the nicest hotels we get to do these things in. Two things. One, I always feel bad that when I'm in a super nice place for one night by myself, because what's the point? If my family was here, we'd access all the amenities, that would be really cool, but it's just me. We're going to do this show. I'm going to have a beer at the bar. I'm going to go to bed. It wouldn't really matter where I was. But two, I feel very well lit for this show.
You're looking lovely tonight, Jeremiah.
Well, thank you. And this is because I have this is one of these very fancy iPad-controlled room setups. And this one, I'm on the romance setting, which is apparently what you do for the room. I looked at the entertaining setting. It was very bright. It seemed distracting. But yes, apparently romance is what's going on right here. So if you want a good podcast setup, next time you travel, maybe go for that.
That's what it takes, folks, for these long-term relationships. Is you got to find ways to keep it spicy, keep things alive. So I appreciate you making the effort, Jeremiah.
Yeah, and there's there are robes here, so you're lucky I'm not doing this in a robe with a martini in hand with a romance setting on, because that might get real weird for the listeners.
Listeners, let us know if you want Jeremiah to do it in robe and martini next time. I think I know what the answer is going to be. All right, let's get into some of the news of the week. Jeremiah, where should we start here?
Well, let's start. One, there's not a lot of news this week, right? Because the international break, and we'll go into how the guys that we have fared. But credit to Phil West on Verde All Day for writing an article using a bunch of simulations about where Austin FC could finish. The punchline being it's going to be a struggle throughout the season, and Austin might or might not make the playoffs. I feel like it's the story of Austin FC other than 2022.
And this is based on a model that American Soccer Analysis has put together, right? So it's kind of taking the stats from the season so far and then projecting those out throughout the rest of the season and trying to predict kind of how the season is going to shake out.
Right. And that's an important distinction, because this is not just what everybody thought teams were going to do going into the season, projecting out to the end of the year, but this is based upon the matches that teams have played so far and how they perform. So it's predicted based upon actual results, but it's super early, so everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt. It's also the kind of thing that you talk about when you have an international break kind of early in the season and you're trying to think about where this team might land.
Yeah, so the model put us just outside the playoffs, right? Yeah, so I would say it is a small sample size, like you said, but I think if what we've seen from this sample size is representative, then Austin FC probably doesn't really deserve better than this model's prediction. But as Phil points out at the end of the article, that this particular sample size contains no minutes from Brandon Vasquez, no minutes from Owen Wolf, almost no minutes from Mikel Dessler. That's three of our best players right there. And then fewer than an ideal amount of minutes from Danny Pereira and Jaden Nelson, two players who are going to need to be important pieces to this team. So I still think that once we get everyone healthy, if this team can equal the sum of its parts, not even more than the sum, just equal the sum of its parts, then they should outperform what this model is predicting. That is still easier said than done, and a thing that Austin FC teams have not done in the past. So let's hope that that comes true.
Yeah, well, let's hope. And the hard part of that is you've also lost the time for these guys to gel, right? They haven't had a preseason, they haven't had the first few games of the season to really figure each other out, and now you're looking at maybe it's that sort of learning each other in style and learning the best 11, because there's not a clear cut. I know we're going to get into this in the Q&A later, but there's not a clear cut formation. It's like this gets the best 11 guys that we have on the field. So now you're figuring that out between now and late May when you have the World Cup break, and it's just like not optimal. But it's happened in the past, and I mean the Western Conference is probably competitive enough around like the fringes and bottom half that Austin could figure it out between now and the break and come in stronger from the later part of the season. And one other thing, I think it's relevant. We talked about whether we should talk about this or not, but Backheeled sort of listed their best off seasons, and Austin finished 14th out of the 30, and middle of the pack feels pretty solid right now, given sort of the things that have happened so far, and gives you reasons to believe that Austin will be better going forward.
Yeah, and I think one thing, we've talked about this awkward World Cup break that I think because of some of the reasons you just said, it is maybe in Austin's favor for a lot of reasons where, okay, all of these key players didn't get this true preseason. They'll get a second chance of that during the World Cup because all those guys are going to be here during the World Cup break. And so they will take a bit of a break, but they're going to come back and be training and going through kind of a second preseason camp. And so hopefully that does work in Austin's favor. And some of those guys who didn't get that preseason will get up to speed. And once we come back from the World Cup break, we'll be fully integrated, ready to go, and actually ready to play soccer with our best 11 on the field most of the time.
Yeah, do we have any idea what that's going to look like? I mean, I know it's super early, but like, do we get friendlies? Do we get a couple weeks of training? Do we have any idea about what we might see from this club when they return?
I don't remember who told me this, but I don't believe this was protected information, but I think they're going to give the players some time off and then come back and kind of do like a preseason camp kind of thing. And so I would imagine there will be some kind of friendly matches. I don't know if that will be with MLS teams, and they honestly might not know yet. Like as late as MLS throws this stuff together, they may not have it settled yet, but I would guess they would play some kind of game, at least one, just to get back up to fitness, because it's going to be almost 2 months off from the last game before the World Cup to the first game after it. So they'll need to get back up to fitness. It's not going to stick for that long.
Yeah, and certainly for Austin and almost every club in MLS, it's not like they're going to have a bunch of players playing in the World Cup, so they're not going to be playing full game speed matches. So they are going to need some time to reacclimate, or it's going to be a really messy, sloggy return for the entire league when we come back after the end of that break.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about our best 11, that is going to be part of the listener questions we do later on. So we've put together I put together kind of a few different iterations that we can look at and maybe critique a little bit. I did them pretty quickly, so I'm not going to say these are the definitive ones, but just some ideas that we can kind of bounce ideas off of. So maybe let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and do some listener questions. We'll talk about how our guys fared in the international break, and we'll cover some other Austin FC news. So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law.
Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back. Jeremiah, we're going to get into some listener questions. We got some really interesting ones that I think we can really dig into a few of them. But first, we have a couple of points here we wanted to cover first. One of them being a few of the reactions to our Brad Stuver interview from last week.
Yeah, I wanted to start with that because I really appreciate Brad's time, and I appreciate Brad like being real with us and giving us insights into like the way he's thinking and what he's doing. There's a couple things that I specifically wanted to call out, and some of them because I was listening to it after we had just played the LA game, or the LA match. I was listening back to it, and some of the, like a couple of things were kind of relevant to like the way they played and what the team did. I think the first thing was when you asked him about the offensive goalkeeper coach, now, and basically like, have you figured it all out or not? And I don't know if you took it this way, but he was talked about like, well, we still try some things, and we tried some things last year in Vancouver, and we gave up like 5 goals. Like I was a little bit surprised we tried things in a game that might have that kind of consequences.
Yeah, I would be curious to know like what they are. I wish I'd have had the presence of mind to like circle back and ask him what they were. Maybe he wouldn't have told us, but like I wonder if we went back and watched that game, if we could say like, oh, here it is, this is what he was doing different, or if it's such a subtle thing that it was more of a mentality thing where he just was out of his game a little bit.
Yeah, maybe so. And then I appreciated him. I think this is a social media clip we posted, but you asked about who his favorite teammate ever was, and he came clean and like without a whole ton of thought about it on the Alex Ring thing. I think part because they played both together in New York and in Austin, and Ring was the first captain in Austin. But were you expecting a different answer out of him on that one?
I really wasn't sure because it I think you said you were, and quite a few listeners who responded on social media or responded in various places were surprised to hear that it was Alex Ring. Guys like Brad Stuver, I think there's some guys on the team, and I think it's generally the older guys, kind of the veteran players, seem like they don't really I don't want to make this sound like a negative thing, but don't like form super tight friendships within the team. And not that like they don't like them or they don't want to spend time with these people, but I think they kind of view it as a bit of a job and try to separate and create time for family outside of those spaces. And so it's less like these are my best friends, and it's like, who's my favorite coworker? Like, which coworker do I like spending the time with the most? And I think guys like Brad kind of approach it that way. And so I truly just wasn't sure who he was going to say.
Well, and it's even more extreme than that, right? Because well, in pro sports overall, and it feels like in soccer more than any other. Like I have many coworkers I've worked with for a decade or more, right? And in soccer, like you're 2 years, 3 years, like you don't get a lot of time with a specific group of guys just because of the way the roster turns over. You look at how many players are Austin, they're 6 years in and have very few players are left from there. So like you kind of have to compartmentalize those things to sort of protect your own feelings in a way.
Yeah, and I think when Brad has been asked similar questions to this in the past, I think we actually asked him on one of the episodes, and we asked like who he's closest with on the team, and he mentioned Alex and Julio Cascante and maybe Brendan Hines-Ike. I can't remember who else it was, but it was again another veteran player who didn't like travel during off season. They stayed home and just kind of made some space for family time. And but yeah, it seems like some of these younger guys, like being new to it, maybe being away from home for the first time, they form these little pods and kind of create bonds with each other because you need that. Like I think you need that more when you're younger, but these older guys view it a bit more as a job.
Yeah, and then I also thought about Ring, and the third thing I thought about was when we mentioned the new guys and who is going to acclimate, and he talked about the role Facundo Torres is playing, which is like, even though he's one of the younger guys, right? I mean, he's accomplished, but he's not like age-wise very old, but like he's kind of the glue guy, right? He's the one that's bringing everybody together, and it feels like, I think he said he's one of the guys that's bringing the joy back to the team, and it feels like that's something
I think he
that
said playfulness was the
playfulness. That's what it was. Yeah, but I thought it was cool to hear.
Yeah, I think reading between the lines, it's probably like the South American guys on that 2022 team, like Maxi, Driussi, Fagundes, like those guys had fun. And I think how do I phrase this? Maybe some of them like were the personalities that like didn't really like buckle down and like take things serious enough whenever things weren't going well, but when things were going well, they seemed like they were a lot of fun to be around, and I'm sure like that's contagious in a locker room. So um yeah, it didn't feel like we had anybody else doing that, so it's good to see that Facundo is kind of bringing that back and not letting Danny Pereira hog all of the limelight in that regard.
Yeah, and then I also know he talked about the board game that everybody played. Not going to remember the name of that, but
I think he said it was called Sequence.
Sequence. I don't know. I know that a certain Slack group I'm in that has a board game channel was judgy of that game and said there were better ones, and we should send a message to Facundo to get people to play the more interesting games. Sequence sounds right. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover in the interview, or you want to go into this next little bit about his role with the national team?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So this is a post from We Are Austin TV, and it was after the U.S. men lost to Belgium 5-2 in a friendly as they're preparing for the World Cup. We Are Austin TV says, posting a picture of Brad Stuver, says, "This is the goalkeeper the USMNT needs heading into the World Cup. Brad Stuver is better than both Matt Turner and Matt Freese right now. Time to have that conversation." Jeremiah, what is your reaction to this statement from We Are Austin TV?
I think this Belgium game was terrible. I think we should be questioning everything about this team right now. I wish I don't see how it happens now. Like, I wish that there was a world where Brad had made a camp and played these players and there was some sense of connection, because it just feels like so far afield. Like, honestly, with the way those guys played, I feel like Brad could probably have done just as good of a job between the sticks on that night, playing in the friendly against Belgium, but he's just like not been a part of the program. I think that jiving with everybody and understanding how everything goes, like that would be a real big challenge. I think just results-wise, there's nothing that says that he shouldn't be there and be a part of it, but I question how if it's practical.
Yeah, I would like to respectfully disagree with the statement that Stuver is better than Matt Turner and Matt Freese. I think both of those guys are really good goalkeepers, and Matt Turner is probably one of the few keepers in the U.S. keeper pool who is clear like a better shot stopper than Brad Stuver. I think Matt Freese might be in that category as well. And then Matt Freese, I think, is probably better with the ball at his feet than Brad Stuver is. And then I think, but I do think a lot of it is what you're saying, that like if he had gotten more of a chance earlier in his career and had gotten integrated, that there would be a chance for him at least getting call-ups over the last 4 to 6 years, right? So you've got like Sean Johnson was getting called. I think he's older than Brad is, but because he was part of the group already, that they would trust him to come in and be the third guy. And then everyone else that is kind of in that same tier, they're all younger than Brad. So if you look at Roman Celentano, Ethan Horvath, who's the guy that was at the Crew? What is his name? Patrick Schulte. He's like 25. Celentano is probably that age. And so I think timing has a lot to do with it. But so I wish Brad had better timing in his career, and maybe he would have gotten a shot, because I don't think he's so much worse than any of these guys that he's like not in their league. I absolutely don't think that's true. But I do think there's a couple of guys who are clearly better than him. And then for that third spot, I think they're probably not going to use the resource of time on a guy who is going to age out before the guys who are already ahead of him.
That's probably fair. Thanks for crushing our dreams. It's great, Landon. Love you for that. Turning my romance lighting off.
Yeah, and I again, I think the world of Brad. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. But it didn't work out, and it's a shame because nobody deserves it more than him, right?
Right. Let's transition into some listener questions here.
All right. Yeah, we have quite a few here, so we'll start off. Let's start off here with Elise. So Elise, this is a behind the scenes look here. Elise wanted me to ask Brad Stuver a question about jam, like what is the best kind of jam? And I was like, Elise, it's a very weird, vague question, and it makes me think that it's innuendo for something that I'm not comfortable asking Brad on mic without having more details.
That's fair.
They swore that it was just a question about jam, but I'm still skeptical. But Elise sent some other questions. She also says the interview is great, and though I feel like I learned the interview is great though, and I feel like I learned a few new things, which is not always easy with how cautious players can be in interview spaces. So, thank you, Elise. I was very happy with it too. And Elise's question though is, if y'all could change one thing about the Q2 in stadium experience, what would it be? So we posted this to Instagram and asked for some responses. I also sent it to a couple of group chats that I'm in and got some responses there. There are quite a few kind of common refrains here. And so I kind of compiled these into a list of kind of the most common ones, starting with the most common ones at the top of this list. And so the one that I saw the most was lower food and beverage prices. I think that
Fair.
is like a peripheral experience thing. It's not necessarily like directly affecting how much fun you're having as far as like game day atmosphere, but it is indirectly informing that, right? Like if you are thinking about how much money you're spending, it's going to hamper how much fun you're having at least a little bit, right?
Totally.
So yeah, I think I think the quality of food and beverage stuff in the stadium is good, but it is crazy expensive, and I wish that they I don't know. I understand they're a business, but also they're a little more than a business, and I wish they, like, not just them specifically. I wish sports team in general treated it like that more.
Yeah, I do. I think the appreciation of the quality I didn't really get until the first couple years when we did the road trip to Dallas and Houston, and they had just like the most generic like high school stadium level of concessions. And I was like, oh, holy smokes, this is really great that we have access to what we have. Also, I hate all jams and jellies, by the way. I wanted to go back to the previous point. So like I also don't have an answer for that question. I know we've moved on, but I had to get that off my chest before we did.
Well, what I told Elise in a side conversation off the air was that I will often, instead of like on a PB&J, instead of jam or jelly, I'll just put like fresh blueberries on it. So peanut butter, fresh blueberries on some toast. It's great. All right, moving on. The next most one, and maybe even more common than the lower food and beverage prices, is more/better access to water in the stadium. I think this one is big. Like it is, I think especially over in the South End, if you're in the supporter section, it is hard to get water in the stadium without buying it, right? Like there's those two Yeti things where you can get water. There's often lines forming there, and the water ends up being warm after a certain point. There's a few water fountains, just kind of traditional water fountains throughout the stadium, but they're not necessarily accessible to every part of the stadium, and they're a little bit hard to find sometimes also if you don't know where you're looking. I've heard that the club response to this has been like partly logistical, like there's water pressure issues or something like that. Do you buy that, or do you think that this is them wanting to sell more Dasani or whatever brand that they sell?
I hope to buy that, but I don't know. But I do agree it's a particular problem for GA, because if I'm in the north end and have a seat, I can take a few minutes to like go find my way to the water fountains, which aren't that hard to find on the north end, and like still come back and sit in my chair. You know, if I'm in the south end in the GA section, like one, it's a journey up the stairs to do that, and then two, like I'm gonna lose my space. Like I think it's an issue that should be solved for that part of the stadium for sure.
Another one we got quite a few of was statements about having more local vendors, whether it be like beer options or food options. What's your response to that, Jeremiah? Because I feel like we do have quite a few. Do you think this is a response to having fewer than there used to be?
That's what I think it is. We do. I don't. I'm not going to do the math on this, but like I believe compared to your average stadium, we have more local options available. But we have fewer than we had in 2021, and we certainly have fewer than everybody was sold on when season ticket packages were being sold in 2020. So I think it's a expectations versus reality thing, and not like reality compared to other stadiums' realities.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one, if it were all cheaper, nobody would care as much, right?
Right.
This one just came from one specific person. This is Davidoff541 on Instagram. But they said better line management and more order ahead support at the concessions. I think a lot of people would be happy with this because Austin is a soccer city, right? So most people are going to try to get their food and beverages before the whistle blows or at halftime. And so halftime, especially, it's like it gets really tight. And
Yeah.
if you don't want to miss soccer, it does like I choose which places I go to based on who's going to let me not miss any soccer. And that eliminates a lot of the vendors in the stadium.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think this is realistic to improve it, or is this just part of the realities of soccer where there's not a 45-minute halftime or whatever? Like it is all very short. The margins are close for when people are going to want it. Like could it be improved?
Yeah, bro. Like everybody's going to show up at the same time no matter what. So like, how do you plan around that? I don't know. I feel like other places in this country or the world have figured that out, but I don't know how.
Yeah, I wonder if there could be more like order ahead logistics where it's like, okay, if you want this thing, if you want one of the fancy corn dogs from the Austin Corner over on the east side, or if you want a burger from that place everyone raves about over by your seats, put in your order by minute 35, and then you just swing in and grab it at halftime. Like, could something, you would think something like that would be possible. I'm sure it's hard, but I think it would be possible, right?
Yeah, and that burger line has gotten so long. I don't order those burgers anymore. And like, it would have to be. I don't know. I don't want to say that I don't trust people, but you would have to have sort of like the Starbucks style setup where there's like a giant tray, there's a giant table space, and it's like A through D here, E through G here, and you'd have to have people watching it to make sure that
Yeah.
what got picked up actually got picked up, and you have to trust humans to not just grab a burger that looks good and ignore the fact that that wasn't the burger that their name was on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which I don't know if I can trust people in that way.
Another thing I saw a few responses of was to do with like cooling options. One of them said something about AC in the bathrooms. Someone else said something about like a cooling station or a way to like have colder water. This is a thing that I would really like to have, is to actually have cold water coming out of the sinks in the bathrooms. I think it's like this is like an Austin problem. It happens in my house sometimes where you turn on the cold tap, and because whatever water line is not that deep underground, it is hot for a while. And I think the water at Q2 is like permanently hot, and then in the few cold games we get there a year, when it's like, oh, the hot water is actually going to feel good now, it comes out cold then. So
Yeah.
it that seems like a logistical thing, but like not an unsolvable one. And then the AC in the bathrooms feels like a pretty solvable one as well. I think they are air conditioned, but maybe not insulated well enough to keep the heat out from coming in, and then maybe not
Well, those doors are like almost,
enough.
yeah. Those doors are almost always like open both ways, right? When
Yeah.
people come in and out. So it's hard to, you've heard your dad. I've heard my dad. Like, we're not air conditioning the world here, but you're air conditioning the world in there when the doors are open all the time.
Yeah, and these are like the cooling stuff, I think, is like a good safety issue as well, because it's not uncommon to see people passing out in the stadium. I think it's like pretty frequent. And not just in the South End, like it happens all over the stadium. People get overheated and go down. So I know switching the schedule will like eliminate probably the number of times that happened, but there's still going to be games where it's really hot, and it doesn't eliminate the factor of that happening in a given game when it gets really hot. So I think these are things that like maybe should be improved.
Yeah, I want to go to this. I want to go to this next one. It says bigger mezzanine, which is there like a mezzanine at all?
I'm reading this as like concourse. So
My number one thing would be for the North Concourse to be wider. Like that North Concourse before the match is a disaster with people coming in because so many people come in from those two gates, and there's people come down from the beer hall. There's people going like both directions, and there's a whole bunch of food stuff on both sides. Like it's a nightmare. Like I hate walking through there.
yeah, this came from Gerardo Betancourt on Instagram, and I totally agree. I think when Q2 opened, I kind of had that thought once it gets packed, and this is not just the north end, but the south end gets really crowded. The east side, which is probably it's the widest one in the stadium, and it gets pretty crazy at halftime. And so whenever you and I went to the Nashville game in 2022, that was the thing that impressed upon me the most about that stadium. It is a nice stadium. I like that stadium, but the thing I like the most is the concourses are feels like a mile wide on every side of the stadium. And it was just so leisurely to like walk through those concourses. I think there's a bit of a footprint issue with Q2 where every foot you give to one thing takes a foot away from another thing. And so they kind of had to make priorities for some of that stuff. But yeah, I agree with Gerardo here 100% that a wider concourse area would absolutely improve the game day experience. This next one, these are some like mascot themed ones, but Slim Pickens on Instagram just says, bring back Kaiju Dillo. 100% agree here, Slim Pickens. Like, y'all know how much I love this giant armadillo. I know it was tied to the Dillo jersey, but they've left the Dillo branding in as one of the like secondary, tertiary mascots that they use in stadium graphics and on print graphics and stuff. Like, I think you could bring it back and kind of keep that one around. Someone else said that you should make an armadillo mascot that is like someone in a costume and not the animal. So you don't have to have a live animal in the stadium. And then also got some calls for making Gracky the Grackle real, which, Jeremiah, I know you know lore of Gracky, but this is I think the idea that the community has rallied around is like a person in a costume, but modeled after the famous drawing that somebody made of a grackle smoking a cigarette outside of an HEB. Just like the nastiest looking grackle that's missing half of its feathers and is definitely going to take food off of your plate if you give it half a chance. Like, that's the mascot that people want. And I think if you had like the friendly armadillo and Verdissimo, and then like kind of the dark mascot of Gracky over here, who's kind of like, oh, we don't really hang out with him, but he's fun to look at from afar. Like, I think that would be a fun little like gallery of mascots to include.
Well, nobody says you can only have one mascot, so let's do it.
One more response. This came from Jordan Gibbs on Instagram. They just said more goals. I think that would absolutely improve.
It would make the experience better. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
2022 was awesome. We got lots of goals then. So yeah, I think that would fix everything, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Elise, thank you for the fertile ground of that question. We got a lot out of that one. And thanks for everyone who responded. It was I had my ideas, but it was really cool to kind of integrate everyone else's. So thanks for adding that in. Next question is from Tom Halleck. Tom says, did Brad get mad at you off air for not introducing him as backup goalkeeper Brad Stuver? Jeremiah, do you remember this bit that we did the first several times we interviewed him?
I do, because the first time we interviewed him, he actually was backup goalkeeper Brad Stuver. I think maybe he had actually been named the starter at that point in time, but I don't think we knew for sure.
I think it was still up in the air until a few games into the season.
So but I also, this is a interview reflection. Like, I also thought it was cool how his strong feelings, positive feelings about Andrew Tarbell, because I could see this situation where when you're going into the season and you got two guys that are both looking to start in the first season, like there would be this like animosity, but clearly like he thinks the world of Andrew Tarbell. So I appreciated that from the interview. I don't know. I feel like we appreciate the backup goalkeeper Brad Stuver a bit more than Brad appreciates the bit. So I think he was probably happy for us to not say that.
I think that's why I didn't do it, is because it would have been a joke for us and not for him, and I felt bad bringing it up. Tom's other question is there anything worse than jamming 7 games in 22 days to start August, especially for a team who traditionally struggles down the stretch? That is a great point. So coming back from the World Cup, we talked about maybe it being a benefit to Austin having that break. But part of the product of that is cramming all these games in with Leagues Cup, with bringing MLS back, trying to get enough games into the year with the World Cup break. And then it being a lot of those games being in Austin, which normally home field advantage is a good thing. In August, it's not necessarily a good thing for Austin.
Yeah, if it was me, and I don't even know if you could do this, I'm 100% in favor of like just blowing off the Leagues Cup this year. And with the way this team is and with them getting back together, like let's focus on the league. Let's focus on like building consistency. But I don't know that they're going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see like what the scenario is at that point in the season with health and depth and form and all of that. But if Austin continues to struggle in the league, and it looks like the back half of the season is going to be like a gauntlet to get it just into the playoffs, you might be right where they're saying like, okay, these are midweek games where we're cramming them into this really tight window. Like, let's not stress about them too much, and let's rotate as much as we need to and make sure that we're ready to go for when MLS kicks back off.
Let's go this Jordan Wall one because we teased this, I think, at least once. So when everyone is back healthy, what's your best 11 starting lineup for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting exercise. We talked about this a lot in preseason, I think. Just kind of looking ahead to the season at what we thought might look like, especially when Brandon Vasquez comes back. But that's not the only bottleneck that we're getting here as far as getting all of our best players on the field. And so I went through and made a few different options. Jeremiah, I will share my screen with you, but we'll try to do our best to explain in words what we're looking at. So you'll see on the left side of the screen, I have an 11 in a vague formation of how I think they could line up. And on the right side of the screen, I kind of have a few categories of players. And so I have 4 categories. The first category, mainly because we're talking about outfield players, the first category is just called Brad Stuver.
Yep.
And in that category is Brad Stuver. He's going to be on the field all the time. We don't have to worry about that part. So let's move on to outfield players. I made a list of 9 players who I'm calling must-haves. And what I mean by that is like, I think any best 11 has these guys in it in one form or another. I am open to feedback or criticism here. Is there any names on this list that you would maybe move to a different category? And for the record, these are Owen Wolf, Brandon Vasquez, Facundo Torres, Joseph Rosales, Danny Pereira, Jaden Nelson, Mikael Dessler, Alexander Svatok, Brandon Heinzite.
No. Yeah, I agree with you on these 9. And I'm sure we're going to get into this in the next bit, but it's crazy to not have one of your 3 DPs is one of your 9 must-haves.
Yeah. So the next category I have, I struggle to think of a title for this category, but it's called situational. And what I mean by that is like there are maybe formations or situations in which one of these guys is like the guy you choose to put into the 11. And in this group, I put Guilherme Biru, Mirto Zuni, Ilie Sanchez, and then John Bell. I could see moving John Bell to the 4th category, which is rotational, meaning play these guys when you need to rest someone, bring these guys on as subs, and it's everyone else on the team. I could see moving John Bell into the rotational category. I put him there just because of his position and say we're going to play a back 5. He's probably one of the top choices to move into that line of 3 center back. So that's why he's there. But I think Biru, he's just super talented, but given the rest of the guys in the field, hard to fit in necessarily for making a best 11 out of a fully healthy Austin FC. Mirta Uzuni, he's a DP. On his best day, he is one of our most talented players, but on most days, he's a guy who maybe you wish wasn't on the field all the time. And then Ilie Sanchez, who I put him on there more out of experience, like just knowing what he's supposed to do, being able to be a leader on the field, keep guys organized and together on the field. We've seen physically he's dropped off a little bit and has lost a little bit of that there, but he brings so many of those other things to it that on a given day or in a given situation, depending on who's available, he is absolutely one of the guys who's going to fit into that 11 a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think he's the guy that I see a lot of times where he starts in that 11. He's never going to play the full 90 minutes. You're going to do other things around him, but for the players in this team and what they each bring to the table, I think you lose a lot in, like you talked about, in terms of leadership and organization without having him on the field. So I can see him starting a lot because of that, not because he's a must-have, but because there's no other option.
Okay, so now that we have the categories of players on here, I essentially used those must-haves. I put them into every 11 that I made. And so I created how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 different starting 11s here. Just, again, these are not definitive. I'm not putting my flag down on these necessarily, but I think it's like a good exploration of like what we could do when we have everyone back healthy. So I called this one the conventional healthy 11. And what this looks like is Stuver in goal, a back 4 of Rosales, Heinzike, Svatok, Dessler, 2 holding midfielders with Danny Pereira, Ilie Sanchez, left wing Jaden Nelson, right wing Facu Torres, Brandon Vasquez is your striker, and then Owen Wolf playing kind of like a false 9, number 10. Think Sebastian Driussi, kind of that 9.5 role where he can float around. He's free to kind of move around and get on the ball, but you want him to get into the box whenever you get into that final third. Any thoughts or disagreements with this 11 here?
Well, one, I wonder if we see Wolf and Torres flipped in this arrangement, where it's Wolf on the wing and Torres playing underneath him, because we've seen some of that from him.
Yeah, very possible.
And then 2, do you really think that Rosales is going to be a left back eventually?
I think that's the biggest maybe gap in this one is Nico Estevez doesn't seem to think that Rosales is a left back. So, and then also like leaving Guilherme Biru out of the 11, it seems weird, right? Like I think if we're just naming like our 11 most talented players, he's in that group. But given positional options, like maybe he's not just because of Rosales there. But I think you're right that getting Rosales and Biru into the same starting 11 gets weird without moving them into weird spaces. I think in this shape, without changing too much, you could move Rosales to left wing, put Biru at left back, and then call Jaden Nelson a super sub. Maybe like health makes that a necessity at some point, given how Nelson has started the season. But I think he's so important to any time we've looked good that I want Jaden Nelson on the field as much as possible. And this is how we do it here. So,
I think your other choice here, Landon, is to send Ilie to the bench and make Pereira and Wolf the dual 8s and then move all the other pieces in the front around.
I think I have that one coming up. So let's move on to the next 11. I called this one the all DPs 11. So this is the same back 4. Rosales at left back again. And then I have a central midfield of Danny Pereira and Owen Wolf. And then Nelson left wing, Torres right wing, Brandon Vasquez and Mirta Uzuni as the dual strikers. This is kind of the system we tried to use early in the year before Brandon Vasquez got injured. It did not work very well then, but if you look at the most recent game against LAFC, this was Mirta Uzuni's best game in an Austin uniform, potentially, like arguably his best game. And this is kind of the role he played, where he was playing underneath another striker. That striker was Christian Ramirez, where Ramirez, like played a good role, but there was a few moments where a ball would get played in behind, a ball would get played through for him, and he just did not have the legs to get onto the end of it. Brandon Vasquez at 100% does and will. Who knows if he'll have that immediately, but at his best, he does have that more so than Christian Ramirez does. So maybe this could work still. I think my big worry here is with Danny Pereira and Owen Wolf as your midfielders, is there enough ball winning between the two of them to do that? I think Owen has the athleticism to be able to cover the ground. So he could do that part, but I think you're maybe asking him not to get into the box as often or get forward as often. And you're leaving Danny Pereira. If he does, you're leaving Danny Pereira there. And we've kind of seen the flaws he has in that role where he's kind of asked to be the lone destroyer hanging out behind everyone. So I think there's some issues with that too.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Let's go on to the next one. I love
Next
this.
one I called the
5 at the back.
Biru CB3. So this is, again, if we're calling Biru one of the 11 most talented players on the field, let's get him in the lineup. Let's play him. Play 5 at the back. Rosales is the left wing back. Biru is the left center back in a back 3 there. And then Owen Wolf, Danny Pereira as central midfield. And then a front 3 of Nelson, Vasquez, and Torres. So we're leaving Uzuni off. And then we're putting Owen Wolf in that central midfield role, but with 3 center backs behind him. And so there's a little bit more cover where, okay, maybe Rosales, if Owen goes forward, Rosales hangs back or Dessler slides in the midfield, and you still have a decent rest defense shape there, where in that back 4, maybe it would be harder to keep numbers behind the ball as Owen moves forward. So another option. I don't know if we'll see it, but I think this could work.
Or let's go on to your 4th. I love how much thought you put into this. Go for it. It's just one question for Tom Alex. So thank you, Tom.
I called this one the MF Joro, which is short for midfielder Joseph Rosales. So this, I think, gets closer to getting our most talented 11 players on the field. I think Joseph Rosales is absolutely one of the most talented players. You have to have him on the field. What if we played him as the defensive midfielder? As like kind of that destroyer player. He moved into the midfield a little bit against LAFC. He was kind of floating around and playing in some of those spots. I was not super sold on the idea coming into the season, but given the way he kind of played in the buildup and just watching him in that last LAFC game, I was like, maybe this could work. And maybe this lets us get more good players on the field. How do you feel about this one? This is 4-4-2. I have Owen as that false 9, 10.5 look. Beer is the left back, and then Joseph Rosales and Danny Pereira as the 2 holding midfielders.
This feels like a dream casting, a thing that is not going to happen. But I appreciate your creativity and your commitment to the consideration.
I don't think this is so outlandish. Like,
okay,
if we're reading into things that Nico Estevez has said about Joseph Rosales, he has brought up himself the fact that Rosales can play in the midfield. So he has actively pushed against the idea of Rosales as a left back, but has actively brought up the idea that Rosales can play midfield. So I think for that reason that like we could see this at some point. I don't know if it's a good idea. It might be a bad idea.
But it might happen. Yeah.
It might happen though. And maybe it would work. Who knows?
Who knows?
Okay, so Jeremiah, by the way, this was a question from Jordan Wall, not Tom Hallett. So
okay. Yes, sorry.
Just want to make sure we're giving credit to the right person here. But if you'll notice, one of the trends here, and you alluded to this earlier, is leaving one of our DPs out of most of them.
Yes.
And I think that is a problem. Like, it's not ideal. You would hope that all of your DPs are undroppable. I mean, there's a reality where Uzuni plays his way into that position. If he can keep playing like he did against LAFC, maybe that happens. But I think another thing to keep in mind is from Tom Halleck's question, where he was talking about all those games in August. Like, there's a lot of games. The season is long. Having the ability to rotate without completely killing your team is good. And I'm hoping we can utilize that to positive effect. And so, okay, yeah, maybe this game Nelson does go to the bench and we bring him on as a super sub. Um, Maybe Robert Taylor comes back and is healthy and productive, and we can use him in that position or start him sometimes to rest some of these other guys. I hope maybe Uzuni is in good enough form that we can rotate him and Vasquez to give those guys rest. So we're gonna need the depth. I'm hoping it is a good kind of problem where all these guys are in good form. They're all playing well. We want all of them on the field. And so when there's rotation, it doesn't feel so bad. That's an optimist's look, but hopefully that's the reality. All right, Jeremiah, how about we take a quick break and then we'll come back and finish up the rest of the listener questions we have. And then we'll get into recapping the international break for the Austin players, and then we'll do our Inter Miami preview.
Sounds
Hang
great.
tight, we'll be right back.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Look, Landon, the world's strange, the market's strange. Sometimes what you need is somebody like maybe Joseph Rosales, who can play a little defense, who can run forward and attack when you need to, can protect you when you need to, and that's what you need. If you need that, go hire Sage Wilson Realty. They'll help you sell your house or you buy your house or do whatever it is you need in the moment in time when it's most appropriate.
Absolutely. And you and I both know Eric Wilson of Sage Wilson Realty in real life. He is just as athletic as Joseph Rosales is.
Perfect. Yes.
I don't know how that translates into buying or selling a house, but it does, trust me. The right strategy can turn today's opportunity into your winning goal. If you're looking for Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, contact our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we're back. We're going to get into our international break roundup and preview the away match in Miami at their new stadium. But first, let's finish up our listener questions. Jeremiah, where did we leave off here?
Let's go with Trevor Allison this summer. This is what we talked about, what we might do during the summer. And this is exactly the kind of question people will probably take up. So this summer, would you rather sign Dennis Mann or Kevin Lasagna? And I'm assuming this is soccer-based and not just name-based, because like Kevin Lasagna is one of the great all-time names.
It is both. This comes from a conversation Trevor and I had in a different space where he was just listing cool names from the World Cup qualifier playoffs. Dennis Mann was one of them. This is a Romanian player playing his club soccer at PSV. Kevin Lasagna is a former Italian international, maybe current Italian international. And so which of these guys would you rather sign, Jeremiah?
Well, based upon my extensive research, Dennis Mann is 6 years younger and seems to play a position that we probably need more, so I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, pros and cons here. So pros for Dennis Mann is all the stuff you just said, more in his prime, playing at a good club right now. Pros for Kevin Lasagna is his name's Kevin Lasagna.
His name's Kevin Lasagna. Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to beat.
Italian, a non-American guy named Kevin is one of my favorite things anyway. And then the last name being Lasagna is just perfect. So I have to stay on brand of boring but accurate and choose Dennis Mann here. But part of me wants to have Lasagna on the team.
Yeah, I'm hungry right now just talking about it. I'll go on to the next one, which I feel like is one of these we're probably going to have the same answer on.
This is also from Trevor Allison.
Also from Trevor. Yeah, if the club decides to redesign the crest one day, would you want it to be a tweak or else it'll change? Would you want a different kind of tree to be the focus? Something else entirely like bats or barbecue or guitars or whatever?
What's the answer that you think we're going to have the same answer?
I think they nailed it the first time around. And if I was going to tweak it, it would just be sort of a which we've seen a little bit with just the tree, like without the crest around it, just like a slightly modified version of the crest that Austin has now.
Yeah, 100% agree. I really like this crest. Looking around the league, like I think there might be others like in a vacuum without any emotional emotional connection to it that I might like more, but there's not many of them. And I would still rank this one very high, even as a neutral, I believe. So I really like this one. I like the symbolism in it. I like the tree as this unifying force in the Austin community. And yeah, I love that variation that's on some of the shirts and on some of the merch where it's that tree outside of the crest shape. That's kind of what I would want it to be. It's like small variations. And then if you look at, I don't know, FC Barcelona or any of these like historic clubs where if you look through the history of every crest they've ever had, they're not that different. They've maybe modernized a few times or changed things here and there. That's all I would ever want it to be. And then with the leaving yourself the space to have fun with it and do like variations on it, but never straying from the core of what it is. All right.
Okay.
As always, Robert Miller, our guy, sent us 11 questions and he even numbered them for us. So I didn't have to count them just now. So this is what we often do when we have listener questions is we're going to call this the Robert Miller speed round. And we're going to see how many of these we can get through in the time that we have left. So Jeremiah, I'll let you choose which ones we want to do here.
Okay, let's start off the top. So aside from Q2, this is going to be one that we maybe don't have a great answer for, but aside from Q2, which stadium has the best atmosphere, which has the worst? Let's just go best.
I think this is a matter of taste in a lot of cases. I think there's like quite a few that have, if we're saying good, just being like engaged as far as like a lot of people participating, there's a lot of people in the stadium. I think there's quite a few. I would then argue that some of those to me are bad.
Okay.
Do you want to guess which ones I'm talking about that I think are bad? Think of like recent Austin FC away days.
Recent Austin FC away days. Oh, no, I don't have an answer. Go for it.
Charlotte.
Oh, man, I didn't even think about Charlotte.
A lot of people in there, they seem very into it, but they also did like a Hawaiian shirt giveaway that half the stadium seemed to be wearing. And it was just like, I don't know. This is my Austin bubble showing where it's just like, it felt very NFL to me in a way that like rubs me the wrong way. But maybe that's just me. Maybe
playing
I'm
in an
like
NFL stadium.
So soccer brain that like most people are fine with it. But to their credit, they are engaged and there's a lot of people there. So we can't take that away from them.
Yeah, I was thinking the best one I've been in person was I went to, this is probably a moment of that match, but I went to Bank of California and saw LAFC win the Supporters Shield against Houston. Those are the most electric stadium environments I've ever been in personally. I would say, like, generally what I see is that, like, just on TV and stuff, I feel like Portland is one that I would really be into also. And maybe because it's also very, like, soccer forward and unique to Portland and unique to the league.
Yeah, Portland's a good shout. I think Seattle deserves some credit. I think St. Louis does a pretty good job. It's like a little bit more. There's like a subsection of MLS fan groups who kind of take the USMNT supporter chant route, which is not my favorite thing, but they're bought into it there. And like, so the crowds are good, especially when that team is good, but the stadium looks nice. It sells out. The fans are engaged. So I think that's a really nice one. What's your candidate for worst? I think Houston's got to be in the conversation.
Houston's really bad. Yeah.
They at least have like some engaged fans. They're small and it feels weird in this big empty stadium, but they do have some engaged fans. I think New England has to be up there.
I think this may be controversial. Like a bad Atlanta has to be up there. Because when that stadium's so big, and then when it can get real empty, when you have what is a really good MLS crowd, but it's like maybe it's because like I know what the environment was like when they were winning trophies, and like that place was full, and they had as many people as the Falcons. But I feel like it's kind of depressing now.
Yeah, I think that's lame. I think like when like RSL and Colorado aren't putting a good product on the field, like those atmospheres can be a little bit lame. Who else can we piss off?
I think we can stop. This is a speed round. We can go on to the next question.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Which one do you want to go to?
Let's go with, would you rather have a good coach and a bad sporting director, or a bad coach and a good sporting director?
I'm going to go good sporting director all day.
Shoot. Yeah, me too. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
But this
I'll because good sporting director is going to sign good players. And I think good players do
can
more
overcome
good
the
than
coach.
a bad coach does bad.
Yeah. It was like, to bring a thing back to Longhorns, like Mac Brown, the talent evaluator, was eventually good enough to make up for Mac Brown, the bad coach, and won a national championship. I want to go to the next question on this one. Would you rather get blown out by Dallas or Houston?
That's a great question, Robert. I want to say Houston, just because I think of Houston as like less relevant in some way, and therefore fewer people will notice or care if it happened.
I would just say Houston, because I would say Houston too, but I guess I feel like my sporting hate of FC Dallas is based upon like on-field stuff and general rivalry, and my hate of Houston is because they suck and they like tried to beat up a bunch of people the first time we went there, and I don't want to get blown out by absolute turd heads like that.
So you would rather? So you're saying
Be
you'd
blown
rather
out by
get beat by
Dallas.
Dallas?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think this is a personal one for everyone. Of like, how are you going to cope best? And so we'll all have our various reasons for that.
I'm going to ask
All
you
right,
one.
what else should we do?
I'm going to ask you one I don't even think you're passionate about, but I have an answer to. Buc-ee's or Love's? Where you stopping on a road trip?
I don't like either of them. I honestly like truly hate Buc-ee's. I don't like going in there. It's always so crowded. To their credit, it's the bathrooms are in good shape. The options are good, but I feel like it is a collection of the least self-aware humans on the planet when you walk into a Buc-ee's, where there's like no order. It's a bunch of molecules bouncing off of each other in a contained space, and people just run into you and just walk through lines and stuff. It gives me anxiety. And then Loves are often just truck stop gas stations, so there's nothing to like about that either.
So my answer is QT, which are usually located near Buc-ee's across the road from them. They usually have a pretty decent like food selection, a lot of options for the snacks.
I was going to say,
bathrooms aren't nearly as big, but they're decent.
The food can be pretty good.
Yeah. So that'd be my choice. Always find the QT that's closest to the Buc-ee's, and you'll probably be better off. What do you want to do next?
I think the next one's kind of interesting. Mopac or 35? I have a clear answer here. I'm a Mopac man.
Well, yeah. We're allowed to use the toll lanes, right?
Yeah. I also don't have to drive on it during rush hour. So.
So yeah, I was going to say, yeah, Mopac has a toll road, which allows me to go way faster than I'm ever going to on 35.
Yeah, I feel like Mopac is a okay experience sometimes, whereas 35 is a negative experience always.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. How about, let's go to question 9 here. Most promising Austin FC2 player. And you get to answer because I have no idea.
I mean, yeah, the best player now, we've talked about him a lot, is Jorge Alastue, but he's like 22 years old. So is he promising anymore? He's like starting to age out of the promising tag, right? So I will say, I mean, if we're counting Irvin Torres, which I don't think we should, he's on a first team contract. I would say him if we were going to include him. But I'm kind of excited about Mo Badawia. I think he's 18, played the last few years in the academy, and has been a regular contributor for that second team. Held his own in preseason whenever we got to see that game against NYCFC. And so I'm curious to see what he can do going forward, because a young guy like that holding his own in MLS Next Pro, it's not a guarantee of success, but it's a good sign for sure.
Okay, and I think the last one we should do is, if you had to score a penalty on Brad Stuver, are you going left, right, down the center, or trying to Panenka?
Oh God, in college I had a friend describe kicking a penalty. He compared it to the feeling of like going to meet up with your girlfriend who you know is going to break up with you. and just dreading it the whole way there. He's like, that's what shooting a penalty feels like. I have never kicked a penalty. And so I've like thought about it, like if I ever have to, which I can not really imagine a situation where I would need to, because I'm not the designated taker on my co-ed rec team. I think I would just hammer it down the middle and hope for the best.
I think, I was going to say nothing, like whatever Brad does is not a consideration here, right? It's like, what can I do that will allow me to have the best chance to make it on frame with any amount of speed, right? Is exactly what I'm going to do. And I think I would go to his right. I feel like I could close my hips and hammer ball the hardest to my left with my right foot.
You think that right now. Yeah, that's exactly my thing too, is like, I'm not placing anything. I'm just going to hit it and hope for the best. And so my middle strategy would be, I'm going to hope he dives, which in reality, he probably doesn't need to. He could probably watch me kick it and then react and just
and
catch
still
it
react.
out of the air.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this sad fantasy, I'm just going to kick it down the middle and hope he dives and misses it.
Always love these questions. Let's go on to a little bit of Austin FC news, then we'll talk about Inter Miami. So we had several
Patreon members. Thanks so much for sending questions. If you are a Patreon member and not sending questions or not seeing the calls for questions, we post these on our Patreon thing. I think it usually sends an email notification. If you're not getting those, you can probably go turn those on or just check that page regularly. But yeah, we always try to get through as many as we can. So if you would like to send questions and are a member of the Patreon, that is generally where we prioritize questions from. So yeah, get on there and submit them when we ask for them. Okay, sorry, Jeremiah, I interrupted you.
Oh. All right, let's talk about Austin FC players on international duty, which there wasn't a ton of. So we get Ukraine loses 3-1 to Sweden. We had this fantasy where Ukraine and Albania are both going to win, and we were going to have either Svatak or Izuni in the World Cup. Neither of those happened. So Ukraine loses 3-1 to Sweden. Svatak's an unused sub. Albania loses 2-1 to Poland. Izuni gets a start and goes 80. Fatmob didn't like how he played. I didn't watch a lot. I didn't watch any of it. It's like I have no idea.
I might have typed this in wrong. I kind of think he played the whole game.
Okay.
But I did watch this one. He was more or less kind of playing the CJ Fodre role, where it's just run a lot. And so they were kind of underdogs in this game. And he was asked to do a lot of defending, made some clearances out of the box, if that tells you anything. But they played kind of a 4-4-2, and he's playing on the right wing. Albania could have won this game. They had 2 open chances in the box that they missed, one of which would have gotten Uzuni a hockey assist. And the guy didn't even put it on frame in the box. And there was another one, and they could have gone up. I think it would have been 3-1 at that point. And then Sweden comes back and scores, and then scores again as they're stretching. So they were the underdogs, but they could have come out with this one if they had just finished a little bit cleaner.
Yeah, and then we do get the matchup between these two because on Tuesday, if you're listening, they're playing a friendly against each other, Ukraine against Albania.
I did not realize this is what would be the result if they both lost. I kind of thought they would both just come home. I'm a little annoyed by this, that they have to stay and play a game that none of those players care about, right? So
right, and it doesn't really matter for the long term, but okay, sure.
Yeah. So Uzuni played a lot the other day. Svatak didn't play at all, but they're both coming back and probably going to have to start against Miami.
Yep.
I'm kind of hoping they don't play. You always want your guys to get minutes with the national team, but I wonder where they are and are all the players and their home clubs, are they all calling these coaches saying don't play my guy? And who wins out on that? Does Svatak get thrown in because he's well, everyone else played and their clubs are bigger and madder at us than yours is, so you have to play 90 minutes today.
I didn't think about that. That seems terrible. We get Joseph Rosales is also playing today in a friendly for Honduras. Facundo Torres is an unused sub, and they're friendly versus England. Oh yeah, and then you have our young guys too. You added notes on both of them.
Does Uruguay play again on Tuesday?
They do play again. I didn't write that down. I don't know if it's on I think it is on Tuesday.
So yeah, we'll see if Rosales and Torres get any minutes in those. But yeah, younger guys, Irvin Torres started in a 4-0 win over Wales for the US U19s. I scoured the internet trying to find more information about this, and all I got was a picture of a starting 11 on the USYNT account that featured Irvin Torres in the starting 11, and then a list of goal scorers, which included Philadelphia Union's Kevin Sullivan. I think Snyder Brunel from Seattle was in it. So he's playing next to like a lot of guys who play minutes in MLS as youngsters already. I think it's a good sign for Irvin to say like, okay, the national team setup thinks that you're on par with these guys who are already playing MLS minutes. I don't know how he played. I don't know how involved he was, but he did start, which is cool. And then Nico Arisizabal, the U18 goalkeeper, was on the bench for a couple of Puerto Rico friendlies. He did not play, but still very cool to see a guy that young even being in consideration for that kind of thing. So hopefully all these guys come back healthy. It would be great to see them either gain more like Facundo Torres, not Irvin Torres, Facundo Torres, like he's still fighting for a World Cup spot, right? Like, so it would be cool if he got some time and can maybe earn a spot into the World Cup roster. But at the very least, we hope they all come back happy and healthy and able to focus on Inter Miami.
Yes. Well, Landon, I got my season ticket holder survey today, I think. Did you get one?
I did. Yeah.
I think it was interesting. And I don't know how much we want to go into it, but it's very much clear that the club is thinking about interest in ticket pricing for this 2027 sprint season along with the 2027-28 full season. Sort of what people's interest in, either paying for them as a package or paying for them separately, or like the other option being like paying basically for the year. It's like having 2027 like sprint season and the first half of the next season, but then paying for the next season separately. There are a lot of choices, questions about including cup or not. The third one seems weird. That was my least favorite option. Yes.
Yeah. There was questions about like including cup matches and stuff. I think let's talk about the basic packages first. The two of them being essentially like packaged the 27 sprint season and the 27-28 full season as one membership that you pay for all of up front, or splitting them up where you pay for it as two separate packages. I, as a season ticket holder who goes to all of the games, unless I'm out of town for something I can't control, I just want to package them and make it easier so I don't have to worry about it. I know like people in our circles will probably feel that way. Do you think there's enough other people who that would be a negative for, where like they don't want to commit to that much of a thing? Or like, what do you think the outcome is going to be of this survey?
Well, I think, because if I remember correctly, there's a secondary question later down the road that was like, well, what if we sold you basically a year and a half at the same time, but it was like a lower cost per ticket overall? I think it's one consideration. It's like, yeah, I'll buy a year and a half, but I'm gonna save money on the overall package. But I think that, there's a certain amount of people who are not complete sickos because they're selling 16,000 season tickets a game that the results on the field matter to. And like those people probably don't want to have to commit to 2027 and 2028 all at once, not knowing what they're getting themselves into on the field.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the split of those people would be, because attendance has been down, but marginally, right? Like the stadium's still mostly full and almost all the season tickets are sold still. So I don't know. It'll be curious to see what they do. The other thing was that you mentioned was they're kind of gauging the temperature of like, what do you value as included in part of your season ticket package? And like, do you like having these other competitions like Leagues Cup and Open Cup, where they have generally thrown in a couple of those games for free for season ticket holders? I know there's a lot of fans who have been kind of upset with not getting cooler season ticket holder gifts. You see like the stuff that Atlanta sends out. They send out these very elaborate season ticket holder gifts, I think every year. Austin has not really ever done that, but one thing I've always appreciated is they include these games for free. It's like, again, I'm going to the games. It's great when I don't have to pay for them. Um, how do you feel about, like, is including those games important to you, or is, again, this is like a sicko brain in our little bubble
Oh,
where most people are like, oh, I don't care about a Wednesday game against a USL team. I don't want to go to that.
I think the games. I think if people stood back and really thought about it, like the extra games, clearly for whatever the price of the gift is, like the extra games are worth more. I think it comes down to how much do you value each competition, because I think the three choices were like U.S. Open Cup, Leagues Cup, and CONCACAF Champions Cup, and I wrote, I think I said CONCACAF Champions Cup I'm interested in more than Austin FC tickets. U.S. Open Cup I'm interested in the same as, and like Leagues Cup I can kind of take or leave.
I did the exact same response there.
Okay. For many reasons. I mean, one, like the Leagues Cup is a tournament that is being forced down our throat by the league, so it's probably going to be the one that they're going to like have it. But then it's also, to Tom's question, it's also in August when it's really freaking hot and you got a bunch of games in a short number of days. And like, clearly, if something's going to give, it's going to be the League Cups game for me.
Yeah, it is one of the core causes of fixture congestion in this league. So yeah. Jeremiah, should we move on to our Inter Miami preview?
Yeah, let's do that. So let's first of all talk about the Los Verdes watch party. For those of us that will still be in Austin, this is going to be kickoffs at 6:30. Watch party start at 5:30. Radio, Coffee, and Beer South on Menchaca Road for Los Verdes. Family friendly, free parking, food trucks, including Veracruz, Shortwave Diner, and Wow Poke. Love Veracruz, and I love Poke. Landon, you will not be watching this at the watch party because you will be in Miami. Do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at the game. So I bought plane tickets and rented a place to stay with some friends before I had tickets to the game. But then when they released that second batch of match tickets, I got in on those. So we will be at the game. I'm excited about it. Like, I will get to see. I saw Messi play when I was on my semester abroad in Spain. He was not trying because they had already clinched the league, and I think he played like 60 minutes and walked most of it. And I also just didn't appreciate it. Like, I was not as in I was just learning about soccer at that point in time. And so I did not get to appreciate it. So it's going to be cool to get to see him play. It will be cool to just be there for the opening of a stadium. That's going to be like, I don't know, any new stadium feels like a big event in MLS, and to get to be there for that, to go on a trip with some friends and hang out. So that's always, I think we're taking 250, 260 people just in the Austin section. And I've heard people saying that they've bought tickets elsewhere in the stadium and are just going to go. So we're going to have a big Austin contingency there. Listeners, if we've met or have never met, please come find me and say hello. I would love to meet you. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've never been to Miami either, so spend some time in Miami, see a new stadium, watch some soccer, hopefully make Lionel Messi very disappointed.
And the CNU Stadium thing is something that has been confirmed now, right? We get the official MLS press release maybe today about that. I think even last week we were talking about where you were going to be when you even watched the game, but it is officially on for whatever goofy name the new stadium has.
It's called New Stadium.
New Stadium.
As in
That's right.
new metal, the genre pioneered by acts such as Korn and Limp Bizkit.
Yes, the greatest angry white man generation of music. Also, watch that weird Netflix show about how terrible that one Woodstock was.
Oh, Woodstock
Limp Bizkit.
99? Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. It did not look like the stadium was going to be done. And frankly, by what I've seen and heard,
It still
I don't
doesn't,
think it
right?
is going to be done. But I think it's going to be done enough for them to justify having the game. I'm guessing we're going to see some untightened bolts and maybe some concessions that aren't open yet. Or, like, it's not going to be firing on all cylinders, because if you think back when Q2 opened, like, they were done probably to the point that this stadium is 6 months before Austin's first game. And the fact that they're doing it this late, like, I'm sure it'll all work out fine. They'll figure it out. We're going to get to be in a building and watch soccer. I think the part that concerns me is the pitch, where they laid their pitch, I think, fewer than 2 weeks before this game. I know Miami is is a climate where if grass is going to grow fast, this is probably where it is. But I was looking it up, and the general recommendation is anywhere from like 2 weeks to a month, like 2 or maybe like 2 weeks to 6 weeks before anybody touches it, like after you put new sod in like that. And it's gonna be like maybe right at the 2-week mark or just under the 2-week mark. That makes me nervous for player safety, for pitch fidelity. Like, if Brandon Vasquez is healthy and ready to go, which I don't know that he is anyway, but if there's any doubt, I wouldn't be shocked, like,
Don't.
if it's 50-50 of putting him on the bench, if they just said, "No way. This man recovering from an ACL surgery is not playing on this weird pitch."
You know, the other thing that going back to the fan experience question, and I don't know how it will transfer because obviously they've been playing before in a different stadium. But one of the things that I remember Austin also doing was like hiring a bunch of people and having them in Q Stadium and like training them in the spaces they were going to be operating in, like the concessions, the security, the ushers, things like that, so they were able to deliver on a good fan experience. So even if they bring people over from the old stadium, the new stadium's a whole different place. So that could also be a bit of a challenge.
Which is a good chance they won't, because it's not
It's
close to the
far.
old
Yeah, it's
stadium.
true.
So,
Yeah.
like, all these, like, hourly employees that you have doing this, like, "Oh, you can keep your job. You have to commute an hour and a half to get to it." And they're like, "No, I'm not doing that." And so, yeah, I think it might be there's potential for it to be kind of a mess. So I'm going into it just expecting that to be the case. But, like, once the game starts, I think the pitch is really the only thing that's gonna be of concern. Hopefully, it's not. Hopefully, it rooted fast enough, it's in good enough shape that it doesn't affect the game, doesn't affect any player's health, but it makes me nervous.
Okay, let's talk about the team. So in the offseason, departures, sort of the rest of the 15 years ago Barcelona crowd is out. Notable arrivals. There's a bunch of names. There are a bunch of players in and out. I think Dane St. Clair is one everybody knows. Bertharame is somebody a lot of people know, and we can talk about why he's important. There was some probably not actually true rumor at all about like Allende being a person maybe connected to Austin, ends up in Miami. How about the other guys that maybe like less international names that are contributors that folks should know about?
Yeah, it's still a lot of high-profile names, just slightly less high profile than Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba, who left in this offseason. But Rodrigo de Paul, starter for the World Cup winning Argentina team, played in Spain and Italy and some other places in Europe. He's on the team. He's kind of recovering from an injury, so TBD if he's going to play, but he's one of the big names they added. Mikael, who's a really good player for Houston, went to Brazil and was really good in MLS the first time. He's more experienced and still very good in MLS this time. You mentioned Herman Berterame, striker who played for Monterrey in Mexico, came over. He's not been super impactful yet, but he's one of those guys who's going to be good. Sergio Reguilon is a Spanish fullback they brought in to kind of replace. Brought him in to fill in at left back for Jordi Alba. He's been injured for a lot of this season. I think he's started to maybe play minutes and maybe he had a setback there, but once he's fit and ready to go, he will be a force in that team as well. So they lost some big names. They brought in quite a few other big names, and more importantly, probably brought in more good soccer players than they lost as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So this team right now is third in the East. They brought it in third in the East now, 3-1-1 this year. They got beat soundly by LAFC on opening day. They have not lost outright in league play since then, but they were recently eliminated from the CONCACAF Champions Cup against Nashville, I think.
Yeah.
It's like what do you see their form being?
For as much talent as they have not consistently been firing on all cylinders and really clicking together as a team. They have been able to turn that on often enough to have still a pretty good record. Nashville is a really good team this year, so they weren't able to do it against them. They weren't able to do it against LAFC, who's also a really good team this year. But the other opponents they've either had enough talent on the field, or Javier Mascherano has been able to make some changes and kind of get them playing in a way that was right for that game in certain times, where it's probably not the record that some people expected them or like maybe thought they should have quite yet, but they just have so much talent that you can never count them out. You cannot say like, oh, this team sucks. They're not going to be as good as they are, because they very much could be unbeatable by the end of the season once they figure everything out.
Yeah, man. Let's go to the Austin side of things. So we mentioned Brandon, and I don't think we've really gotten any indications other than that one quote from him that was a goal that's a month ago now that like he might be back. So I think the biggest hope would be that Owen Wolf comes back. So what do you think the percentage odds are that we see Owen?
I would maybe say like 40%. And even then I would guess that would be a substitute appearance. So like he dresses and they bring him on at the end of the game, if everything's feeling right. Again, for all the things we talked about, like they're slow playing it. They're playing on this weird new pitch that maybe isn't going to feel good. And then we like didn't have a midweek press conference last week because they were off this week. So we also just haven't heard anything from Nico in a while. Before then, the company line was after the international break, he should be good to go. Maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. And he's still not quite there. So I'm hoping we at least see him on the bench and maybe get some minutes, but I would probably put a lot of money against him starting this game. So don't get your hopes up, listeners.
Well, let's go on to this, maybe the last note for this match, because I want you to unpack this one, which just says Landon's hopes for Stuver.
Yes. So just thinking of like visualizing what would be like special moments in this game. Nico Dubersarski, Argentinian, played in the Argentinian league before coming here. It would be so magical for him to either start or come into this game and just get a crunching, clean and fair, but brutal tackle against Lionel Messi. And for him to like have that experience and say, I played against the greatest that's ever played, who's from my country, who he probably grew up watching and idolizing him. And to go in and like go toe to toe with him and like come out ahead at least once. Because there's a good chance there might be a few other times he doesn't come out ahead, but it would be so cool to watch him just destroy Messi at least once.
I love that for him. And I would love that for you to be in the stadium when that happens.
As far as the rest of the game, I mean, we'll see who's like, is Svatak ready to play when he comes back? Talking about Uzuni, I was talking to someone about this the other day. So Uzuni playing that kind of withdrawn forward role, I wouldn't be surprised to see Esteves try to get him into that space again. But do you think that him playing in that role necessitates having another striker playing ahead of him? Does that mean does it mean Ramirez has to start with him? Or do you think we can play him as like kind of that withdrawn forward without another striker up there kind of holding center backs there?
I don't think it works best for his skill set to do that, because we've seen him play, up top and not work that well, and we've seen him playing that too with Vasquez where it didn't work necessarily very well. So it seems like if he's going to do that, he's got to have somebody over the top of him to get the best that we can out of him.
Yeah. I think some of the other question marks are Mikael Dessler. Is he ready to start in this game yet? I hope yes. It would be really cool. Like good for the team if he could get on the field. And then Jaden Nelson, is he ready to go again, or is he going to... I would hope he would at least be available, but whether or not he's ready to start is another question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a little bit, ultimately, like the big picture thing is kind of like we talked about LAFC, where everything needs to go right. The formation has to be right. The players have to stay within themselves and put the best performance in the field. And you also have to do that, and now you're on the road. So I don't like it. I hope you have a good time. I don't think you should expect to win.
Has the best player who's ever played the game.
Yes, there's that too.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it comes out well. It's a cool moment. Just like I don't want to be all fanboy about a guy on the other team, but we grouse about Messi being in the league all the time and how much attention he gets paid. I stand behind all of that, but also in the other hand,
It's
can
also
hold the
really
fact
cool.
that it is
Yeah,
amazing.
it's
that
also
he's
really
here.
cool. Yeah.
It's going to be really cool for us to play against them in that special moment in the new stadium. And so I'm looking forward to the spectacle of it and getting to be there and see that in person. So hopefully we get a spectacle. I hope we get to see at least one moment of magic from Messi, but I hope that we have more moments of magic from Austin collectively and can kind of have all hopes fulfilled there, where I get my Messi experience, but also get to destroy him.
That sounds perfect. Let's leave the show on that note and wrap it up.
All right. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet. Sign up for the Patreon. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the Miami away match and then preview the LA Galaxy match at home and then cover any other Austin FC news that comes up. Till then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.